The morning sun cast long shadows across the manicured gardens of Windsor Castle as Queen Camilla walked briskly through the ornate corridors, her heels clicking against the polished marble floors. She had been planning this moment for weeks, waiting for the perfect opportunity when King Charles would be away on his official visit to Scotland. Today was that day, and she felt a surge of satisfaction knowing her plan was finally coming together. Princess Charlotte, now 10 years old, had grown into a poised young lady who carried herself with the natural grace expected of a future senior royal. Her blonde hair was neatly braided, and she wore a simple blue dress that complemented her bright eyes. She had been summoned to the Queen's private sitting room, though she wasn't entirely sure why. Charlotte had learned from her mother, Catherine, to always be polite and respectful, especially when dealing with family matters that seemed important to the adults around her. Camilla had spent considerable time crafting her approach. She believed that Charlotte needed to understand her place in the royal hierarchy more clearly, and she had conceived what she thought was a brilliant solution. The girl was bright, articulate, and showed promise, but Camilla felt there were certain boundaries that needed to be established early. She had observed how Charlotte sometimes received attention that seemed disproportionate to her current position in the line of succession, and this bothered her more than she cared to admit publicly. The Queen's sitting room was elegantly appointed with cream-colored silk wallpaper and antique furniture that had been in the royal family for generations. Fresh flowers adorned every surface, and the afternoon light filtered through heavy curtains, creating a warm but somewhat formal atmosphere. Charlotte entered quietly, offering a small curtsy as she had been taught, her eyes curious but cautious. Camilla smiled warmly, gesturing for Charlotte to take a seat on the velvet sofa opposite her chair. She had rehearsed this conversation multiple times in her mind, believing she was about to have a meaningful discussion that would benefit everyone involved. The Queen poured tea from an exquisite porcelain set, the ritual giving her time to gather her thoughts and present her idea in what she considered the most diplomatic way possible. Meanwhile, in the security office located in the castle's East Wing, Royal Protection Officer James Morrison was reviewing the daily briefings when something unusual caught his attention. Morrison had served the royal family for over 15 years, and his experience had taught him to notice subtle changes in routine and protocol. He had been specifically assigned to monitor interactions involving the younger royals, ensuring their well-being and proper treatment according to established royal customs and legal protections. Morrison noticed that Princess Charlotte had been called to an unscheduled private meeting with Queen Camilla, and no other family members or official staff were present. This deviation from normal protocol raised a red flag in his mind. Royal children, particularly those in direct succession, were typically accompanied by their parents or designated guardians during formal discussions. The absence of Prince William, Princess Catherine, or even a palace official made this situation worthy of closer observation. The protection officer had access to discreet monitoring systems throughout the castle, designed to ensure the safety and proper treatment of all royal family members. These systems weren't meant for surveillance in a traditional sense, but rather to protect against any inappropriate behavior or potential security threats. Morrison's instincts, honed by years of service, told him that this particular meeting warranted careful attention. Back in the sitting room, Camilla began her carefully planned conversation with Charlotte. She spoke about the importance of understanding one's role within the royal family, and how each member had specific responsibilities and positions that must be respected. Charlotte listened politely, though she wasn't entirely sure where the conversation was heading. The Queen's tone was pleasant enough, but there was an underlying seriousness that made the young princess feel slightly uncomfortable. Camilla then introduced her main proposal, suggesting that Charlotte might benefit from adopting a different title that would better reflect her current position in the family structure. She explained that titles weren't just ceremonial but carried weight and meaning, and that sometimes adjustments needed to be made to ensure clarity and proper precedence. The Queen presented this idea as though it were a natural progression, something that would help Charlotte understand her place better and prepare her for her future responsibilities. Charlotte's initial reaction was confusion rather than resistance. She had grown up understanding that her title was something established by tradition and her position in the line of succession. The idea that it could simply be changed, especially without her parents being involved in the discussion, seemed strange to her young mind. She asked politely about whether her father and mother knew about this suggestion, which caused a momentary pause in Camilla's explanation. The Queen assured Charlotte that she was simply exploring possibilities and that nothing would be decided without proper consideration. However, she encouraged the princess to think about how this change might benefit everyone involved. Camilla painted a picture of reduced pressure and expectations, suggesting that a different title might allow Charlotte more freedom to develop her own interests without the weight of certain royal obligations. As the conversation continued, Charlotte became increasingly uncertain about the entire situation. Her parents had always taught her to be respectful, but also to trust her instincts when something didn't feel right. The fact that this discussion was happening without their knowledge or presence made her feel isolated and somewhat vulnerable. She began to suspect that this wasn't just a casual conversation, but something more significant that might affect her life in ways she didn't fully understand. Officer Morrison, observing the situation from his monitoring station, noticed subtle changes in Charlotte's body language through the security feeds. His training had taught him to recognize signs of discomfort or distress, particularly in children who might not have the vocabulary or confidence to express their concerns directly. The young princess appeared to be shifting nervously in her seat, and her responses were becoming shorter and more hesitant. The protection officer faced a delicate decision. Royal protocol required him to respect the privacy of family discussions while simultaneously ensuring the welfare of all royal family members, especially the children. His primary responsibility was to protect Charlotte from any form of inappropriate pressure or treatment, regardless of who might be applying that pressure. Morrison understood that his intervention could have significant political ramifications within the royal household, but his duty was clear. He began by consulting the official guidelines regarding royal children's titles and the legal processes required for any changes. What he discovered confirmed his suspicions that Queen Camilla's proposal was not only unusual but potentially outside the bounds of established protocol. Title changes for members of the direct line of succession required specific approvals and procedures that couldn't be bypassed through private conversations or informal agreements. Morrison also reviewed recent communications and schedules to confirm that neither Prince William nor Princess Catherine were aware of this meeting. Their absence during such a significant discussion violated several established safeguards designed to protect royal children from undue influence or pressure. The protection officer realized that immediate action was necessary to ensure Charlotte's well-being and to maintain proper royal protocol. As Camilla continued to elaborate on her proposal, Charlotte found herself feeling increasingly uncomfortable with the entire situation. The Queen's persistence and the formal nature of the discussion made it clear that this wasn't just a casual suggestion, but something she was expected to seriously consider. Charlotte's natural intelligence and intuition told her that accepting such a significant change without her parents' involvement would be wrong, but she also felt the pressure of showing proper respect to her step-grandmother. The young princess asked again about involving her parents in the discussion, which seemed to irritate Camilla slightly. The Queen suggested that sometimes adults needed to have preliminary conversations before involving everyone else, and that Charlotte was mature enough to understand and discuss these matters independently. This response only increased Charlotte's discomfort, as it directly contradicted everything her parents had taught her about family decisions and communication. Morrison made his decision and quietly left his monitoring station, making his way toward the Queen's sitting room. His approach needed to be carefully calibrated to respect royal hierarchy while fulfilling his protective duties. He couldn't simply burst into the room, but he also couldn't allow the situation to continue without proper oversight. The protection officer's years of experience had taught him how to navigate these delicate situations with diplomacy while maintaining his primary focus on safety and protocol. As he approached the sitting room, Morrison could hear the conversation continuing through the partially open door. Camilla's voice had taken on a more persuasive tone, and Charlotte's responses were becoming noticeably shorter and more uncertain. The protection officer recognized these as warning signs that required immediate but tactful intervention. Charlotte, meanwhile, was struggling with how to respond to the increasing pressure. Her young mind was processing the implications of what was being proposed, and she was beginning to understand that this conversation might have consequences that extended far beyond what she initially realized. The absence of her parents was becoming more troubling to her, and she found herself wishing desperately that they were there to guide her through this unexpected situation. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test the boundaries of royal protocol, family dynamics, and the protective systems designed to safeguard the younger members of the royal family. Morrison's intervention was about to change the trajectory of this private meeting and potentially expose underlying tensions that had been building within the royal household for some time. Officer Morrison approached the sitting room door with measured steps, his mind racing through the proper protocols for this delicate intervention. He had witnessed many complex situations during his 15 years of service, but none quite like this one. The protection of royal children was paramount in his duties, yet he also had to navigate the intricate web of royal hierarchy and family relationships. His knock on the door was firm but respectful, the sound echoing through the ornate corridor. Queen Camilla looked up with surprise and mild irritation at the interruption. She had specifically chosen this time for her conversation with Charlotte precisely to avoid such disturbances. Her carefully planned discussion was reaching a crucial point, and she felt frustrated that her privacy was being invaded. However, royal protocol demanded that she acknowledge the protection officer's presence, even if she questioned his timing and necessity. Charlotte felt an immediate sense of relief when she heard the knock. The conversation with her step-grandmother had been growing increasingly uncomfortable, and she welcomed any interruption that might provide her with a moment to collect her thoughts. The young princess had been struggling to find a polite way to express her concerns about the proposed title change, and Morrison's arrival seemed like an unexpected lifeline. Morrison entered the room with professional composure, offering the appropriate acknowledgments to both Queen Camilla and Princess Charlotte. His experienced eye quickly assessed the situation, noting Charlotte's tense posture and the formal atmosphere that seemed heavy with unspoken pressure. He had learned to read these subtle signs during his years of protecting the royal family, and everything he observed confirmed his earlier concerns about this meeting. The protection officer began by explaining that he needed to conduct a routine security briefing with Princess Charlotte, a standard procedure that he claimed had been scheduled earlier in the day. This diplomatic fiction provided him with a legitimate reason for his presence, while avoiding direct confrontation with Queen Camilla. Morrison's tone was respectful but firm, making it clear that this was not a request, but a requirement that took precedence over other activities. Camilla's reaction was swift and sharp. She questioned the timing of this supposed briefing and expressed her displeasure at having her important conversation interrupted. The Queen's voice carried an edge of authority that she rarely used, but which made it clear that she viewed Morrison's intervention as both unnecessary and inappropriate. She suggested that any security matters could surely wait until their discussion was concluded. Morrison maintained his professional demeanor despite the Queen's obvious annoyance. He explained that security protocols couldn't be delayed or postponed, especially when they involved the direct line of succession. His words were carefully chosen to emphasize the legal and regulatory aspects of his duties, making it difficult for Camilla to argue against them without appearing to disregard Charlotte's safety and well-being. Charlotte watched this exchange with growing awareness that something significant was happening. She might not have fully understood all the underlying tensions, but she could sense that Officer Morrison's arrival was more than just a coincidence. The young princess began to realize that the protection officer might be there specifically because of her conversation with Queen Camilla, though she wasn't entirely sure how that was possible. As Morrison continued to insist on the immediate necessity of the security briefing, Camilla found herself in an increasingly difficult position. She couldn't openly refuse to allow a protection officer to fulfill his duties without raising questions about her motivations and priorities. However, abandoning her conversation with Charlotte at this crucial moment would mean losing the opportunity she had been planning for weeks. The Queen attempted a compromise, suggesting that the security briefing could be conducted in her presence, allowing the previous conversation to continue afterward. This proposal revealed her determination to complete her discussion with Charlotte, but it also demonstrated her lack of understanding regarding proper protection protocols. Morrison politely but firmly explained that security briefings with royal children were confidential matters that required privacy. Charlotte found herself caught between the competing demands of the two adults, both of whom seemed to have strong opinions about what should happen next. Her natural inclination was to be respectful and accommodating, but she also felt an increasing desire to escape the pressure of the situation. The arrival of Officer Morrison had given her hope that someone else was looking out for her interests, even if she didn't fully understand the complexities involved. Morrison decided to escalate his approach slightly, mentioning that the security briefing was part of a larger review that had been requested by senior palace officials. This statement, while not entirely false, was deliberately vague enough to suggest higher authority involvement without making specific claims that could be easily verified or contradicted. The implication was that his presence and insistence were backed by people with greater authority than those currently in the room. The mention of senior palace officials caused Camilla to pause and reconsider her position. She was keenly aware of the political dynamics within the royal household and understood that challenging decisions that came from higher levels of authority could have serious consequences. However, she also suspected that Morrison might be overstating his mandate in order to interfere with her legitimate conversation with Charlotte. As the tension in the room continued to build, Charlotte made a decision that surprised both adults. She stood up from her seat and quietly announced that she would like to participate in the security briefing that Officer Morrison had mentioned. Her voice was small but clear, and there was a determination in her manner that hadn't been present during her conversation with Queen Camilla. This simple act of self-advocacy marked a turning point in the entire situation. Morrison immediately supported Charlotte's decision, praising her for understanding the importance of security protocols. His response was designed to reinforce her choice while making it difficult for Queen Camilla to object without appearing to oppose Charlotte's own preferences. The protection officer's years of experience had taught him the value of empowering the people he was protecting to make their own decisions whenever possible. Camilla found herself outmaneuvered by the combination of Morrison's professional authority and Charlotte's unexpected assertiveness. She attempted one final effort to maintain control of the situation by suggesting that the security briefing could be postponed until the following day, allowing their important conversation to reach its natural conclusion. However, her suggestion lacked the force of her earlier demands, and she could sense that the momentum had shifted away from her. The protection officer remained steadfast in his position, explaining that security matters couldn't be delayed for convenience and that postponement would require approvals from multiple levels of palace hierarchy. His bureaucratic language was deliberately complex and time-consuming, designed to make it clear that pursuing this path would be far more trouble than simply allowing Charlotte to leave for the briefing. Charlotte, meanwhile, was becoming more confident in her decision to leave with Officer Morrison. She had begun to understand that the protection officer was offering her an escape from a situation that had been making her increasingly uncomfortable. While she still didn't fully grasp all the implications of what had been happening, she trusted her instincts and the training her parents had given her about recognizing when something didn't feel right. As Morrison prepared to escort Charlotte from the room, he took a moment to address Queen Camilla directly about the importance of following proper protocols when discussing significant matters with royal children. His words were respectful, but contained an unmistakable warning that such conversations should involve appropriate family members and official oversight. The message was clear without being openly confrontational. Camilla's frustration was evident as she watched her carefully planned conversation slip away from her control. She had invested considerable time and energy in developing her approach to Charlotte, and the interruption felt like more than just a procedural inconvenience. The Queen suspected that Morrison's intervention was more calculated than he was willing to admit, but she also recognized that challenging him further would only make the situation more complicated and potentially embarrassing. Charlotte offered a polite farewell to Queen Camilla before leaving with Officer Morrison, her relief evident despite her efforts to maintain proper royal composure. The young princess had learned valuable lessons about trusting her instincts and seeking help when feeling pressured or uncomfortable. She didn't yet understand the full significance of what had just occurred, but she sensed that something important had been resolved in her favor. As they walked through the castle corridors toward Morrison's office, Charlotte began to relax for the first time since her conversation with Queen Camilla had begun. The protection officer maintained a professional but reassuring presence, allowing her to process what had happened without feeling the need to explain or justify her feelings. His experience had taught him that sometimes the most important protection came from simply providing a safe space for people to think clearly. Morrison knew that his intervention had been successful in the immediate term, but he also understood that the underlying issues that had prompted Camilla's actions hadn't been resolved. His duty now extended beyond protecting Charlotte from this particular situation to ensuring that proper protocols were established to prevent similar incidents in the future. The protection officer began planning his report to senior palace officials, knowing that this incident would require careful documentation and follow-up. The aftermath of this confrontation would ripple through the royal household in ways that none of the participants could fully anticipate. Morrison's intervention had protected Charlotte from immediate pressure, but it had also exposed tensions and power dynamics that would need to be addressed at the highest levels of palace management. The incident was about to become a catalyst for broader discussions about royal protocol, family relationships, and the protection of younger family members. The news of the incident reached Prince William and Princess Catherine within hours of Morrison's intervention. The protection officer had followed proper protocol by immediately reporting the situation to his superiors, who recognized the sensitivity of the matter and the need for swift family notification. William's reaction was one of controlled anger mixed with protective concern for his daughter, while Catherine felt a deep sense of gratitude that the security systems had worked to protect Charlotte from inappropriate pressure. King Charles received the report while still in Scotland, and his response revealed the complex position he found himself in as both a father and a husband. The king understood that Camilla's actions, however well-intentioned she might have believed them to be, had crossed important boundaries regarding his granddaughter's welfare and the established protocols governing royal children. His immediate decision was to cut short his Scottish visit and return to Windsor to address the situation personally. Charlotte, meanwhile, had spent the evening with her parents, finally able to express her feelings about the uncomfortable conversation with Queen Camilla. The young princess described how she had felt pressured to agree to something she didn't understand and how relieved she had been when Officer Morrison arrived. Her honest account of the experience reinforced her parents' concerns about what might have happened if the protection officer hadn't intervened when he did. William's investigation into the incident revealed that Camilla had been planning her approach to Charlotte for several weeks, consulting with advisors who shared her view that certain adjustments needed to be made within the family hierarchy. The Prince of Wales was particularly disturbed to learn that these discussions had taken place without his knowledge, and that they had specifically focused on ways to diminish Charlotte's position and status within the royal family. Princess Catherine took immediate steps to ensure that Charlotte understood she had done nothing wrong and that her instincts about the situation had been completely correct. The Princess of Wales used this incident as a teaching moment about the importance of trust, communication, and seeking help when feeling uncomfortable or pressured. Catherine also made it clear that Charlotte should never hesitate to contact her parents if similar situations arose in the future. Officer Morrison found himself in the unusual position of receiving both praise for his protective intervention and subtle criticism from some quarters for interfering in family matters. However, his superiors and the senior palace officials uniformly supported his actions, recognizing that he had properly fulfilled his duties under challenging circumstances. The protection officer's handling of the situation became a case study in how to balance respect for royal hierarchy with the fundamental duty to protect vulnerable family members. When King Charles returned from Scotland, his first priority was a private meeting with Charlotte to ensure she was unharmed by the experience and to reassure her about her place in the family. The king's conversation with his granddaughter was warm and supportive, emphasizing that her title and position were fixed elements that couldn't be changed by informal discussions or pressure from any source. Charles made it clear that Charlotte's parents were the primary authorities regarding any matters affecting her life and future. The king's subsequent confrontation with Queen Camilla was conducted in private, but its effects were felt throughout the royal household. Charles expressed his disappointment and anger about Camilla's actions, particularly her decision to approach Charlotte without involving her parents and her attempt to manipulate a young child regarding matters she couldn't fully understand. The king made it clear that such behavior was unacceptable and would not be tolerated in the future. Camilla's response to the criticism was defensive initially, as she maintained that her intentions had been positive and that she had been trying to help Charlotte understand her position better. However, as the full implications of her actions became clear, the Queen began to realize that she had seriously misjudged the situation and violated important family trust. Her attempts to justify her behavior only served to highlight how inappropriate her approach had been. The incident prompted a comprehensive review of protocols governing interactions with royal children, particularly regarding discussions about their titles, roles, or future responsibilities. New guidelines were established requiring that any such conversations involve parents or designated guardians, and that protection officers be informed of any unusual or unscheduled meetings involving minors in the royal family. These changes were implemented quietly but thoroughly to prevent similar situations from occurring in the future. Prince William took the lead in establishing clearer boundaries regarding his children's interactions with other family members. While maintaining respect for the broader royal family, he made it clear that certain topics and decisions were exclusively within the parental domain and couldn't be addressed by others without explicit permission. These boundaries were communicated diplomatically but firmly to all relevant family members and staff. The broader royal household staff received additional training regarding their responsibilities toward protecting royal children from inappropriate influence or pressure, regardless of its source. The incident with Charlotte had demonstrated that threats to royal children's well-being could come from unexpected directions, and that vigilance was required at all levels of palace operations. Staff members were encouraged to report concerns immediately and were assured that they would be supported for following proper protective protocols. Officer Morrison's role in the incident earned him recognition and advancement within the Royal Protection Service. His superiors viewed his intervention as exemplary of the kind of judgment and courage required for protecting the royal family effectively. Morrison continued in his duties with an enhanced awareness of the complex dynamics within the royal household and the ongoing need for protective vigilance. Charlotte emerged from the experience with increased confidence in her own judgment and a better understanding of the importance of seeking help when feeling pressured or uncomfortable. The young princess had learned valuable lessons about personal boundaries and the difference between respectful family discussions and inappropriate attempts at manipulation. Her parents were proud of how she had handled the situation and used it as evidence of her growing maturity and wisdom. The relationship between Queen Camilla and the Wales family remained strained for some time following the incident. While public appearances and formal occasions proceeded normally, the private family dynamics had been altered by the breach of trust that Camilla's actions had created. Recovery would require time, genuine remorse, and demonstrated changes in behavior that proved such incidents wouldn't be repeated. King Charles found himself implementing new family protocols that balanced his role as monarch with his responsibilities as a father and grandfather. The incident had highlighted the need for clearer guidelines about family interactions and decision-making processes, particularly regarding the younger generation of royals. These protocols were designed to prevent conflicts and protect family relationships while maintaining appropriate royal hierarchy. The incident also prompted discussions about the pressures facing royal children and the importance of protecting them from adult political dynamics and power struggles. Charlotte's experience became a catalyst for broader conversations about how to raise royal children in an environment that prepared them for their future responsibilities while preserving their childhood and personal autonomy. Within the Royal Protection Service, the incident became a training example of how to recognize and respond to subtle forms of pressure or inappropriate influence targeting royal family members. Morrison's intervention was studied and analyzed to help other protection officers understand when and how to act in similar situations that required balancing respect for family privacy with protective duties. The long-term effects of the incident extended beyond the immediate family to influence how the royal household approached interactions between different generations and branches of the family. New awareness emerged regarding the potential for misunderstandings and conflicts when family members attempted to address sensitive topics without proper consultation and oversight. Princess Catherine took particular satisfaction in knowing that the protective systems surrounding her daughter had functioned effectively when needed. The incident reinforced her confidence in the Royal Protection Service and her belief that Charlotte would be safe and supported as she grew up in the complex environment of royal life. Catherine also appreciated that Charlotte had learned to trust her instincts and seek help when necessary. The resolution of this incident demonstrated the importance of having robust protective systems that could function independently of family politics and personal relationships. Officer Morrison's willingness to intervene, despite the potential consequences for his career, showed that the security and well-being of royal children remained the paramount concern for those charged with their protection. Years later, Charlotte would look back on this incident as a formative experience that taught her important lessons about personal boundaries, family loyalty, and the importance of having trusted adults who would protect her interests even in difficult circumstances. The young princess had learned that being royal didn't mean accepting inappropriate pressure, and that she had both the right and the responsibility to speak up when something felt wrong. The incident ultimately strengthened the bonds between Charlotte and her immediate family, while establishing clearer protocols and boundaries that would protect all royal children in the future. What had begun as Queen Camilla's attempt to assert influence had instead resulted in stronger protective measures and a renewed commitment to prioritizing the well-being of the younger generation above all other considerations.